we have Anand with us. So the next talk is on basically testing and automation, measuring effectiveness and ROI, right? So I'll quickly give a quick introduction about Anand. He is joining us from Gurgaon office. Hello, Anand. Good morning to you. Yeah, so Anand is a software quality evangelist with over 20 years of experience in the software testing field. He's passionate about shipping a quality product and specializes in product strategy and execution, and builds automated testing tools, infrastructure, and frameworks. Anand is a contributor to the Selenium project as well. He writes testing-related blogs and has built open source tools related to software testing like WAAT, WAAT, which is Web Analytics Automation Testing Framework, TaaS, TaaS for automating the integration testing in disparate systems, TTA, Test Trend Analyzer, and Teswiz. So if I have to quickly describe about today's topic, which Anand is going to talk about. So automation is thought of as the silver bullet, right? That will enable teams to ship left and accomplish CI/CD. However, how confident are you with the value added by the automation implementation in your organization and teams, right? So in this open discussion, let's explore the following factors, right? Commonly used metrics to measure effectiveness and ROI from your testing and automation activities. Do these metrics actually help in identifying the blockers and root causes for the issues? And how do these metrics help to make decisions to better the product quality overall? And we'll also discuss some other metrics that can help, right? So with this, I'll quickly hand this over to Anand. Yep, Anand, over to you. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Krish. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so I'm actually going to request everyone in the offices if you can come up, because I want to talk less. I want to hear more from you. It's going to be the reverse way around. So if you can come up, and people in the offices, if you can keep the mic unmuted, because I'll be asking a lot of questions and I'm hoping to get a lot of feedback and interaction with you along the way. Would that be possible? Bangalore, Chennai? Yeah. Okay, I think you're still on mute. That I can't hear anyone. Okay, people joining online, again, request you to unmute whenever you can contribute. If you cannot speak up, put the question in, put your responses in chat, and I'll look at that. Also, any questions along the way, do not hesitate to put it in the Q&A, and I'll keep monitoring that as well. So let's see if this is going to work fine. Okay, so far so good. And I'm just going to make sure I've got chat window and Q&A open in front of me as well. Okay, excellent. So shall we start? Yeah, okay. So thanks again for joining. It's great to be back at Thoughtworks. It's great to be back in vodQA. It's great to see vodQA continuing to grow. It's been, I believe, 12.5 years now since the first vodQA happened. So it's great to see this continuing. And again, post the pandemic, it's great to see people coming back face to face again. It's a lot of familiar faces. So thanks for coming back. What already Krish has spoken a lot about me, so I'm not going to do any of that, but I look forward to continuing the conversation with you on Twitter, LinkedIn, and those who have my email. Let's continue the collaboration over there. I would love to hear from you and learn from you along the way. Okay. But what I want to do is I want to know more about you, and this is going to be important in the next 40-ish minutes of our discussion today. So I want you to speak up what your role is. So any QAs or testers, STETs over here? Okay. Everyone over here in Gurgaon office is in the testing space. What about Bangalore? Any other role than QAs testers? I see a lot of hands. Okay, great.
So I am a cloud architect.
Cloud architect. Okay, great. Excellent. I know Narayan is there. He does one role. He doesn't is not going to be sufficient for him. What else? Any other roles? Chennai, people online. What other roles do we have here? Anyone other than testers?
Bangalore, full
Yeah.
stack QA.
Full stack QA. Okay, great. Developer. Okay, great. Now we have a developer also joining. We've got architect. We've got an all-in-one role as well in the audience. Okay. So we now have different perspectives in the group over here. Some roles may not be there, which is fine, but we play multiple roles anyway in our teams, in our projects, right? So I hope you can contribute in those roles as well. Why is this important? It is important because we need to understand the current state of our projects. And in current state of a project, what do we want to understand? There are different aspects. Okay. From a process and strategy perspective, let's start off from there. Again, this is where I'm going to need a lot of interactions. Okay. In your current teams where you're working with, do you have a separate testing or separate automation team? Hands up if you are. Okay. Now, a lot of people in Gurgaon, they have a separate testing or automation team. Okay. What about other offices or people online? Yes, I see a few yeses coming. There are separate teams for testing automation. A few no's as well. Great. Okay. Thank you for that. Do you have a separate sprint or iteration for testing? That means you are not really doing in-sprint testing or in-sprint automation.
No.
Everyone is doing in-sprint testing, in-sprint automation?
Yes, at least
We have separate automation.
But are they doing in-sprint automation? Whatever features are being developed in the sprint, are they testing and automating in the same sprint? No? So testing is still a little bit delayed for whatever reasons, right? And that's an unfortunate reality in a lot of organizations, especially as the team sizes are big, products are more complicated, many teams involved. It is not possible to try and complete all these activities in the same sprint, even though we want to. No one is saying we don't want to. It is challenging. Okay. Praga is saying we are trying. Yes, great. Now we need to try and we need to see how we can get better at this activity, right? Okay, that's good. Next question. Do we have a defined path to production? Does everyone understand what is path to production? No? Okay, I see a few no's.
The transition through the various stages.
is the code which travels from one stage to the another till production. Kind
Okay,
of
a transition of code and how the code moves from developer machine all the way to production, right? Now the developers are writing front-end code, they're writing back-end code, they are doing database activities, DevOps activities, all those, right? Everything combines. But how does that code, what they are contributing to, move eventually to production? It could be as a user feature, it could be a supporting thing from an infra perspective, right? Doesn't matter. Config changes, for example. How is it moving from developer machine all the way to production? So does anyone have a defined path to production? Other teams, other offices, online?
Yes.
Okay, who said yes? Could you explain what does it mean? What is your path to production look like?
You mean how the transition is happening, like you explained?
Yeah, but what are the different stages over there in path to production?
Different stages as such for a particular requirement. There is first I2P happening from the product side, and then design. Design meaning how we are going to implement inside our product, and then we groom it as a team. Team in the sense both developers and QA. And then development happens. As you said, there are
Correct. So now when the development happens, what happens next? That happens on the developer machine. What happens next?
what
Not in
happens
terms
to-
of process. Yeah, I'm talking about the path to production, right?
Okay, there are different stacks we have for testing. The small team will have a separate stack. We will be maintaining it similar to our production environment, and we will be testing it separately. We will be building that particular code chunk, and then we will deploy it, and then we will be testing it on our own. Then we will automate on top of that the requirements that we have. And it will be once we are done with our system testing or branch testing, as we call it, we'll be moving it to a integration environment where the automation cases that we write for this particular requirement will run as a regression suite along with the other code that we are deploying, that we are planning to deploy into production.
Mhm.
And their integration testing happens.
Okay.
And from there,
So basically, if I have to simplify it, removing the process side, dev machine, QA environment, maybe an integration environment, maybe there is a pre-prod and then prod, something like that, right? And there are different activities of testing that are done in each of these stages before it is released to prod, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that's what Suresh is also saying online. Thanks, Suresh, for that. So yes, I think in general, we get a sense of what a path to production seems to be, right? Which is good. We need to understand, we need to have a defined way, and it has to be seamlessly known to everyone. Now, there's some interesting things you mentioned about feature branch or whichever branch as well, right? Which branch you're working on. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But how do you get a uniform visibility across all the roles, all the teams? What is your path to production? And that is very important. But this is from a process side of things, okay? We are talking about testing and quality. Let's get more deeper into that. In terms of testing, what do you have on your quality dashboards? I'm not talking about testing dashboards. Is there a difference, testing and quality? Yes. Yeah. So what do you have on your quality dashboard? Do you have a quality dashboard that indicates the quality of your product? Okay, what do you have, Shannon?
So basically, we have a kind of business requirements mapped to kind of what is automated and what is not automated, automation coverage, and what is passing and what is failing. So we are using basically Jira with X-ray and pushing all the results and trying to maximize the coverage with automation and showing the quality around that. In the last sprint, how many failures were around that.
Okay, so again, if I have to simplify it, you've got business requirements, you've got test coverage. What type of test coverage is this? Is it functional automation coverage or?
So basically it's a integration and end-to-end test coverage.
Integrated and end-to-end. So again, it's going to be UI tests of sorts, right?
UI and API.
API as well. Okay, great. And then there's also aspects of defects that you mentioned, what is happening over there. So that is also there. Okay, great. How many of us have such quality dashboards?
Recently, we also have started integrating time to production, like how much time a commit takes to go to production.
Excellent. That's a very good thing to measure and look at. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Any other thoughts? What you have on your quality dashboard?
Like what sense of quality gates, since you talked about the processes in the earlier slide. So what all quality gates you have, and on those terms of quality gates, there are some dashboard specific to that quality gate. For example, we also talked about unit or integration tests that actually become a pre-commit to a dev machine. And then they essentially run on the pipeline. So some sort of coverage from that point of view. And then, as Ishan also mentioned, mapping of integration and functional coverage that happens on a different dashboard, but then you have to define what specific quality gates are there and what dashboard maps to which coverage.
Correct. So does it mean that you have got multiple dashboards?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are different dashboards. Okay. And we'll come back to that in a little bit, right? So based on what I'm hearing, I think escape defects or defect leakage, what we call it, right? That is one set of information that we have on the dashboard, right? That I think you mentioned too as well. Do we map how much time it's taking for manual testing? Do we do manual testing anymore or exploratory testing? I hope no one does manual, but do we do exploratory testing?
We do.
Do we map the time it is taking for exploratory testing?
You have some initial estimate and then
Estimated time is there actually in Jira.
Estimated time is there on the test cases or whatever the test plan that you create. Does that come onto your dashboard?
It doesn't.
Is that important?
It doesn't. But
It's a difficult thing to do, right? Because it's manual, this sort of subjective. And though we might say I've got 100 tests to be executed, it will take on an average X number of minutes or hours, whatever, for all of these. It's an estimate, and then no one really looks back at it. Eventually, you have to do it, whatever said and done. You will optimize, you will take shortcuts, whatever you'll try to finish it up. You'll finish before time, just in time. It will take a long time, but we don't map it back on the dashboard to say how long are we really taking for this.
In a waterfallish approach, we used to map basically the times and all the scope.
Correct. In waterfall, there was this Gantt chart where you would say this is a defined activity for all these and the duration for all these activities for that matter, right? But who's working on waterfall anymore? In fact, is agile overrated? Are we ready to look for the next big thing because we've been doing agile for a long time? We need something new buzzwords, right? But anyway, that's a difficult problem, right? Genuinely, it's a difficult problem. Again, not because no one wants to track these details, but it's a difficult problem to solve. Now, coming back to the earlier point about multiple dashboards, for example, who looks at these results? Who looks at these dashboards?
Depends on who's bothered about a particular quality gate.
Different
So
state.
let's not talk philosophy. In your team, who looks at the dashboard? QA manager, Scrum Master.
Let's say from a functional point of view, when you're talking about integration and functional, a client has some visibility on those quality gates because they are monitoring it from that standpoint. But when it comes closer to, let's say, a commit at this moment, then it's majorly the devs and the team who's working on that piece of code.
So each role has got a defined responsibility per se, right? And metrics would be relevant to that role. You want to make it easy for them. You spoke about clients and clients want to look. Do you expose all your dashboards to the clients or you have a curated set of dashboards for the clients? No right or wrong answer, depending on what is required to be shown. It's work in progress. You don't want to show everything as a daily work in progress. You want to show some decent or different aggregated information because you don't want unnecessary escalations to happen. It's still work in progress, right? So it's a very judicious, conscious call that you say what information is relevant to which stakeholder. You have to make that available, right? Nothing wrong at that. Yeah.
Just like
We only share the good news. We only share the good news to clients.
Very rightly said.
time taken for manual testing. So when the task gets created in Jira, there is some sort of effort estimation by the person who creates the task.
Yeah. It's not coming back to the dashboard. That is my point, right? Again, estimation, especially for testing, separate topic, separate discussion, maybe better offline than in a recorded session, but okay. Okay. All said and done, I asked this earlier as well. Do you really have time for exploratory testing?
I think the first kind of first attempt when a new thing is—
That's not exploratory. You're making sure basics are working fine before you get to your technical activities.
We do have some bug bashes within the team, like
Not exploratory. Exploratory is most of our audience here are testers. How much time do you say, I'm not going to look at requirements, I'm not going to look at automated tests or the test cases identified that I want to execute manually. I just want to explore the application, thinking about the user, different contexts. I just want to explore and see what could be going wrong. Or is everything working fine? Do we really get time for that? Do we really get time to see what would happen in responsive design or different browsers, different devices? Do we really get that luxury of time? Unfortunate answer is no, right? We want to, again, intent is there, but it's not possible. Okay, let's get to automation. Anil, I'll request a time check from you, 15 minutes before. Okay. So in automation side, okay, do you automatically rerun the failing tests to see if they pass again? Yes, no, raise of hands if yes. Yes. Okay, I'll see online as well. People on connecting via Zoom. Yes, automatic reruns. Okay. Please don't do that. Again, a separate topic of discussions. Okay. Are your UI automated tests, functional automation tests or system tests, end-to-end tests, what do you really call? Do they run automatically?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. What are the trigger points?
Anything should actually deploy.
Trigger point is developer's code or tester's code basically.
So any developer code or testing code change, then you run it, right? And that is very important because you cannot have it just to say, I will run it based on a schedule. Or I will run it when any test code changes, then I'll run it. It should be when any developer code also changes, you should be running it. That's the value of automation, right? So it has to be, and that too, it has to be for every front end and back end code change from developer side, not just back end, for example, right? Or not just front end, for example, because I want to run front end tests. Because back end changes will also affect the front end. So you need to make sure you're getting value of automation over it.
I have a different separate point of view. So we run on the conditional basis that our UI tests run on some conditions. And there's a change in backend, it should not run because we have a hard layer of integration tests and the contract tests, but we run on the custom conditions.
That's optimization, right? Maybe it works for you. Maybe it's a shortcut. Context will define what is right or wrong. But you should be thinking about whatever automation you have, any change in the ecosystem, whether it is test code or dev code, you should make value of that automation, because if you run it, if anything is breaking, you will know immediately. And I mentioned the question about UI automation, but it's really any type of test, relevant test. Again, the path to production comes into picture here, right? What test to run at what changes that are happening in the system. Okay. Do we do cross-browser testing, cross-device testing? Manually automated? Okay, manually automated. Now, what about the folks from other offices?
Manually, we do it.
Manually, okay.
It's automated in some
Yeah.
cases.
There's a cost involved with that, right? Infrastructure or licenses, whatever, there's a cost involved. But again, it comes down to the risk factor. What is the risk of something not working well? And if that risk is great, then you have to spend time in that other activities to make sure you're getting the automated feedback. Okay. What other types of automation are done for the product? As testers, we are typically focused on API workflow, UI testing, maybe performance testing of sorts.
We have static scans for security.
Security scans is there. Okay.
Dynamic we are planning, but
There's auto build of dashboards, like they're logging dashboards. Some matrices are automated on the basis of whatever transactions are happening.
Mhm.
And then obviously there are triggers and alerts to it.
Okay.
After that, those matrices.
Okay. The question though over here is, which roles look at what different types of automation is there? As a functional tester or as an end-to-end tester, whatever you call it, right? If your role is about doing API and end-to-end testing, do you look at other types of test results as well to understand how the product quality is or not? Where there might be gaps in coverage? Or are you focused purely based on what activities you need to do, and that is what you care about? And that becomes a problem, especially from a testing perspective. It is very important that we look at not testing as an activity, but quality of the product. And quality involves all different types of testing, all different types of automation. Yes, you cannot do everything. You need to focus on some areas, but if you do not know about what other types of testing is done, then that's a problem. Example that Ishan was mentioning, they're doing contract testing, or they've got a separate integration test that is there. If the testers are not aware of these types of testing, what will happen? You'll end up duplicating or writing tests which are not going to be as valuable. It is very important to think about different types of tests and take a look at what is going on, have at least a decent idea, if not a deep idea, what is going on with these. Okay. Last question from automation side. There was a question, I think, Tanya, you asked earlier, right, about Cypress. But the question really is, are you using tools and technologies which are accessible for everyone on the team, all roles on the team? Many a times we use great products, which might be licensed products, but unfortunately the license cost is based on per user license. There is a big limitation of how to make it accessible to everyone on the team. And then we create subject matter experts. Essentially, we are creating bottlenecks. We are not creating subject matter experts. We're creating bottlenecks in the team. If you want that information to be easily visible to everyone, everyone should know about it, then you need to use tools, technologies that will be accessible to everyone. Right? Does that mean you're always going to be working on an older type of tool or tech stack just because it's known to everyone? No. You have to think about upscaling and using better, newer tools, but it has to be accessible. You upscale, you help each other learn about it, but make sure everyone is able to contribute to it in some fashion or the other. Sam mentioned this in a keynote, right? You don't have to be technical in terms of writing code, but can you understand technology? Can you read code? That makes a very big difference. Okay, so this is the current state. Let's get to the core topic that we want to talk about. Effectiveness and ROI. How do you really understand? So this understanding of current state is very important when we are thinking about how do you measure the effectiveness and ROI. Okay. What is ROI? Anyone from other offices online? What is ROI?
Return of investment.
Okay, that's the expansion of the abbreviation. Great. What does it mean?
So how effective you are, whatever the process you are taking for the effort that you have put in, how much does it give you in return?
Correct. So if you are
the company or the product.
Could I simplify that? Essentially, from a client point of view, if he's paying for a quality role, what essential safety nets they are getting in terms of quality for that money. And nothing leaks to production. If everything runs good for them, your role is justified. If not, then it's in trouble.
I think the quality analyst role should be fired and removed from the industry. Because if the quality analyst role is responsible for showcasing quality, what are the other roles doing, right? That's my perspective on it. So client, does he care about really how many roles or how many people are there? What does client care about? This is my deliverable, this is my cost. Am I getting the quality for that? And then you sort of balance out based on the cost and the budget that you have for the objective that you have. Of course, one person cannot do all the roles. So you need specializations for different activities required. That's where a quality analyst, a DevOps, a developer, project manager, business analyst, all these roles come together, right? Because one person cannot do everything. You'll never get anything delivered.
How many bugs
I think the
escape
quality
to production?
How many bugs escape? Yes, that's fine. But when we're talking about ROI, again, the point comes down to who is the role looking at it, right? So you mentioned a very important thing. From a client perspective, the ROI parameters will be different, right? They don't necessarily care if there's a QA or not. They care about defects, they care about quality, and of course, what features are being delivered. That is important to them, right? Quality analysts and other roles, it's a matter of budgeting and balancing the portfolio to get all activities done correctly in that time, right? But ROI for a QA will be different. ROI for a project manager will be different. ROI essentially is return of investment, as correctly said. It is what is the effort required, the cost required, and what is the value you are getting in turn back from them, right? So again, the type of activity, the role that is looking at it is going to change what this really means, because you're looking at different aspects of the overall SDLC of the software that is there. Likewise, what is effectiveness?
Anand, quick time check. Sorry to interrupt. 15 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so effectiveness is, can you get the desired outcome out of it, right? You put in a lot of effort, it is return of investment. Yes, we are getting good value, but overall, is this effective? Is it really adding value to my end goal? That becomes a very important. So with that perspective, with that understanding, let's get into what metrics we use to measure. Okay. Now, from a planning perspective, we've spoken about a lot of this. So I'll speed up a little bit over here, right? We mentioned estimation. That's an activity that is there. But unfortunately, when we look at estimation, certain activities are not looked at after the fact if we did well on that or not. Maybe because we've got too much time spent in other activities, we just want to get done, right? The total time spent for executing the regression suite. How much time does that take? Because for major releases, especially, you want to execute everything again to make sure nothing else is broken over there. Are we really thinking about the maintenance of the automation? In some cases, we might be having tech debt activities that are planned out, and you're putting that in your sprint planning. But how are you making that visible? Is that very explicit in nature? or we try to squeeze in whatever time we have to do the cleanup that is required. These are important things that we need to think about. What effort is required for that? How do you measure that as well? Now, the execution results itself, right? What is happening with the different suites that you are executing? The status of that. Reruns, if you are doing, why are we doing the reruns? Are you getting deeper into that or not? You need to understand that. Now, how many of us do code coverage from functional tests? Anyone? Raise your hands or on chat.
So we do code coverage from functional tests, mostly unit tests, obviously.
That's not functional. No? Functional, I'm talking about API workflow or UI tests.
UI test. Okay, no.
Yeah.
We do not do that.
If anyone is doing, please don't do it. It doesn't add any value. You want top of your pyramid to be as small as possible. Trying to increase the code coverage from the small test, it's meaningless. Instead, think about feature coverage. Okay. Now, feature coverage, tracking it to your Jira features or epics or user stories, again, a meaningless activity. It doesn't help. The traceability matrix is sort of a question mark in my mind, what value it brings. But you need a way to understand the feature coverage of your functional coverage, feature coverage from your top of the pyramid to see if you have got sufficient coverage across the breadth of your product. And do you have a heat map of sorts which says important features, critical features, risky features have got more coverage or less, right? It's an indicative factor. How many of us track percentage of flaky tests? Okay, few hands up on, yeah, I see some hands up in other offices as well. Thank you. That's a very important metric. It shows there is some problem somewhere. And that's why if you have flaky tests, anyone doesn't have flaky tests? Okay, one hand up, no flaky tests. If there are no flaky tests, why are you rerunning the test? If there are flaky tests and if you're rerunning it, what are you doing with the flaky test? You're just hiding the fact. That's why don't rerun your test automatic. The number of test cases executed, manual versus automated, and trending that information. Are you doing that? That can be a very important metric to see, are you doing more over a period of time? Okay. What percentages of automatable test cases are there in your product over time? Again, trending that. Are you tracking that part? If there is a large percentage of tests that cannot be automated, any layer of the pyramid, that's a problem. That means your product is not testable. What can you do to improve testability of your product? It's an indication about your product quality, right? Requirement traceability metrics we spoke about in accordance with the functional coverage that is there. And the defects found, right? I think that's an important aspect, which I think everyone does. Okay. But now the question really comes down to, which again we have referred to earlier, is who are the metrics for and who is looking at those, and how are the metrics helping your product become better? Is it just to satisfy someone, this is the status, but then, okay, fine, we proceed from there? Or are you doing something with those metrics to make your product quality better?
Somebody should be responsible to ensure that they are trending in the right direction.
That's the next stage, right? Trending in the right direction. But again, there's a huge complexity and we'll get to that part very quickly, right? But trending is a very important aspect for most of the metrics to see if you're getting better over time or not. That is very important. And for that, you need to understand who the metrics are for. And is that valuable information to make your product quality better? Okay. So let's look at some of the metrics that matter in my perspective, right? So what are the metrics that matter and for whom? So I'm starting off from top of the food chain in some ways, right? Sorry if this is a bad analogy, but let's start off with management or leads or clients if we are in the services field, right? What is important for them? They care about the speed of release. How quickly can I get features implemented? And along with that, of course, they are going to care about the quality. Okay. But in speed of the release, how do you measure that? Look at the cycle time. I believe someone from Bangalore or Chennai mentioned that, right? How much time does it take to get into production? That's a very important metric over a period of time. How much, it's not about the velocity of the team. The team might say, I'm done, but if it takes 2 months after the fact, when they are done to get that feature in production, it's a very long cycle time. So cycle time is a very important metric to look at. Time taken to complete a work item, and complete means start till end, which is get into production. The Next part is change lead time. Any changes that you do.
Question here.
Yeah.
Is it fair to measure cycle time? Because I mean, the complexity of features varies quite widely.
Yeah.
So,
So if we've got, let's assume there are 3 offices connected, right? All 3 are part of the same complex feature. Team 1, Team Gurgaon, super efficient, or maybe the change of unit of change required is just a couple of lines. I'm done in 1 hour for this change. But the impact of what that change has been done, if it cannot be seen for 2 months, who is suffering? The team is suffering, not Gurgaon team. It's the overall product that is suffering over there.
I meant to ask, the trending thing, like measuring its trending correctly over time, like if you have just deployed a very complex feature, it could be high.
Correct.
And then in the future when it's...
So there are different ways to categorize that as well, right? You can exclude certain percentile as outliers.
Right.
You can take average, you can take mean. Again, it is an indicative thing to see as a team what you're doing, as a product what you're doing. Okay. If this team, the type of work that they do can be actually released to production very quickly by means of, let's say, feature flags or feature toggles or something with appropriate backing of quality, then why can you not just release and go to production or instead of waiting 2 months to get that feature line? That is the cycle time. So there are ways to improve cycle time for each team. And then as a product, how can you improve that as well? Okay. The next aspect is
7 minutes.
Yeah. The next aspect is change lead time. So after development is complete, what are the inefficiencies in your path to production that might prevent the change to go live quickly? Maybe testing is a bottleneck, maybe DevOps or change review team or whatever it might be, right? That is a problem. Are you tracking work in progress? How much work in progress is there? What is the age of stories? What is the overall work in progress for the team? Because just starting to do too many things but not completing is not adding value to anyone. So how can you be efficient on that? Bug leakage, defect leakage with root cause. And this can get very extensive as well, defect density based on environments. You can have various different parameters. Again, think about how you can get better information out of that. And also look at your tech debt from development and testing perspective. And testing includes testing and test automations activities. Okay, what is the tech debt and how can you address that? Now, from quality of the product perspective, what is management going to care about? Test execution status, which means execution time, RCA of failures, and it has to be per environment, because again, these are actionable things. If this environment seems to be getting more test failures, what is the reason? What can be done to fix it so that we can move on and get better quality feedback? Okay. Mean time to recovery, if certain things go down, certain services go down, how much time does it take to recover back from those as well? Can we track it? Okay. So restore is there. RCA is a very important aspect, as we mentioned, the defect RCA, bug RCA that is there. Priority, severity, environment, by automated test or non-automated testing. How did we find that? And then how are we fixing it? The process of fixing also, can we prevent the same issue going back to production in form of an automated testing?
Time to recovery, isn't that the purview of DevOps?
Doesn't matter. What management cares about is if something goes on, how much time is it going to take for me to get back? Who solves it? Different aspect, right? Now, that is from a management perspective. You come to developers, a lot of things we've spoken about already, right? Quality, code quality. This can be done on local IDs as well as in the build pipelines. Can you fail a build if code quality is not as per your standards that you have set? Number of active versus inactive branches. That again indicates code smells. What are those inactive branches doing? Is there something meaningful over there or not? Once the branch is merged, why can you not just delete it off? Do you have too many branches in parallel going on? How many successful builds have been there versus failing builds? What is the cause of those? So if you see a low number of successful builds, then you have to do a RCA and find out why are the builds failing? How can you prevent that from happening? How many builds have pipeline as code versus manually configured? Because once it is pipeline as code, then you can templatize it. You can run those checks automatically as part of your pipeline. You don't have to manually configure it. No one has to remember to add those checks in place. The number of tests in each repo. Again, this is subjective. Some repo might be very low risk or not used as much, not changing as much. Less tests is fine. But where the changes are, what is the number of tests per repo. That's an indicative metric as well. Number of successful release when in the path to production, when you deploy from dev to QA or QA to integrated environment, are there any deployments that fail or the releases that fail over there? Why is it failing? Is it configuration issues? What else is there? Tracking these is very important. And this is important from a developer point of view because they need to do things differently to improve these aspects. How many releases are you doing from your main or master branch or trunk compared to other branches? That again could indicate a problem. Now you can say my dev branch is my main branch. Fine. That is your main branch. How many releases are you doing from there versus a feature release branch or a hotfix branch? Indicates a problem. There could be code that is different and not merged correctly. It can lead to errors, right? What is the feedback time for developers once they push a change? And feedback is not just for the test that they are writing, it's from all the downstream tests as well. How quickly can they get the feedback before they pick up the next user story to work on? Okay. And in this feedback, how many regression failures have they caused? That means they are not actively looking at the regression tests that are there in terms of taking feedback from them. From a testing role perspective or tester role perspective, automated test itself, right? Do we know the test pyramid? Do we have a test pyramid defined correctly? Do we look at all those results? Are we implementing tests at the correct level in this pyramid? That is very important. Look at the functional and visual coverage out of it. What type of issues are there? Because functionally everything might be fine, but visually things might fail. So how can you get that automated feedback from visual perspective as well as part of your automation? Look at that aspect. Then code coverage versus code quality and feature coverage, right? So again, it's a combination. Lower layers will look at code coverage, higher layers will look at feature coverage. That will be important to look at. And NFRs as well. Okay. Overall test execution time, we look at it per suite, per environment, what is happening, again, to get an indication where there might be delays happening in your path to production. RC of test failures. Again, there could be a lot of different ways to classify this. Choose this list appropriately as per your environment. Classify it so you can again trend based on what is going on in your product. And that gives an indication how you can make it better. So trend analysis is very important for most of the metrics to see if you're getting, not just know the current state, but are you getting better or worse? Prioritize automation backlog is important. Pipeline as code for automated tests is also very important, not just for developer code, also for automated tests. So this is a very important aspect. Build pass percentage. So how many tests fail? Are they consistent failures? So come up with strategies, blue-green type thing, right? This is my passing test pipeline. This is a failing test pipeline. So you are able to distinguish the build results, your test results based on what is consistently passing, what has failures because of flaky tests or defects or automation bugs itself. Right? So there are a lot of different aspects to look at from a build pass percentage. And the number of new tests that you're adding from an automation perspective. Again, it shows is your automation team actually adding more value in terms of the tests that they are working on. Non-automated testing also has got a lot of different parameters. How do you reduce the time for manual regression? This is the most important thing, right? The estimation that you had for manual testing, is that over a period of time going down? Why are we doing automation? To reduce the time it takes for manual testing. Is that really happening? Is anyone capturing this metric? Are we actually reducing the time for manual testing or exploratory testing over here? Because what is important has been automated. Escape defects from automation, percentage of tests completed and remaining from non-automated perspective, number of tests that had to be re-executed, new tests added as new features are done. So these are all very important aspects from a non-automated perspective. And for defects, again, we've spoken about this quite a bit, so I'll not go over here. But from a testing perspective, you need to understand the defects very well and take decisions accordingly. Okay. Last couple of things from a product team perspective, also you need to think about what is important for them. So what you mentioned, I think, believe Ishan, right? The requirements. Do you have automated tests against those requirements to indicate, yes, my requirements are still working fine? That is important. Getting the feedback of released features versus what is expected. Product builds on hypotheses. Are you comparing after release, is that hypothesis met or not? Is there a dashboard to track this thing? And the feedback provided on user stories. I'm not a big fan of filing defects when story is not done. I give a feedback to the developers, this is not working well. but are we tracking how much feedback is given back in terms of saying there was a gap in understanding over here, we should do something better. So there are a lot of different things that can be done. Likewise, from an ops perspective, also there'll be their environment health checks and alerts could be there, successful deployments in each environment, number of that, the RCA for failed deployments, why did that really happen? Time taken for each deployment. If you have to set up a new environment from scratch or rebuild an environment, how much time does that take? Again, doing a trend analysis over time. This will give a lot of insights. Are you really getting better? And there are many other roles for which there might be different types of information that is required. But now the key thing over here is, can we get all of this together in one dashboard, a quality dashboard, which will have insights for each role. And everyone should have access to these reports as well. And we should take a look at these results as well. Okay. Some of the practices that will help, I'll take just 2 minutes and wrap up over here. I know we are running short of time probably, but it's very important to have a unified and real-time dashboard. Follow the 80-20 rule. With 20% effort, can you get 80% of the information? That gives enough indication to say where the problem might be and what I need to investigate further. Don't try to spend a lot of time to build the remaining 20% because it is going to take a lot of effort. Start with the 80-20 and then where the gaps might be, just focus on those areas. But dashboards give an insight into what it might be, and then focus on collaboration, conversations, dig deeper to figure out how you can get better. Okay. This is going to be based on personas, 80-20 rule we spoke about, automated data collection, and visualizing it appropriately. That is very important. So you can take decisions. From an automation perspective, we spoke about the test pyramid. We already know about that, so I'll move on from here. We need to think about the execution strategy, path to production. If anyone on the team does not know what the path to production is, that's a problem. In fact, this is a visualization that I use. I create over there front-end code, back-end code, all the different stages of path to production, and what activities of testing and automated tests are going to run at each different stage. So it's a very clear visualization what is going to happen there. Create your own path to production. You might be aware of it. How is a new team member going to know about it? A very simple visual can give you a lot of insights. Yeah. Build for scale, increase coverage, and quick feedback. So again, over here, data strategy is going to be important. Parallel execution is important. Think about parallel versus distributed execution, especially important in the mobile native app context, right? Distributed test execution versus parallel. Is that required? This is a great tool, the ultra-fast grid from Apply Tools, to increase your test coverage by writing less code and running the test only on a single browser or a single device. It's a very interesting concept. Take a look. Maybe it helps you, or take it as a concept and see how you can build it, a similar thing on your own. But write less to do more. That's the approach that you should have to get increased coverage and quick feedback. Okay. So I believe that is where I'm going to now stop over here. I have not looked at the questions over here. I don't see any questions rather for that time right now, but any questions you have, I don't know how much time we have to take it, but I'll be around for some more time over here. And I hope this gave you some insights into standard metrics are fine, but the value and how can you help make your product quality better? That is an additional aspect that I really want you to take away from this session. So thank you so much. If there are questions, maybe we can take it or we can take it offline.
Any question from here?
If there are any questions, please shoot them, because if not, then we can proceed. As Anand said, he's around for some time. You can ask him as well. Very good.
What we can do is whatever questions you have, you can put it in the Q&A. Anand can meantime answer the questions in that Q&A itself, so that we are not further delayed on the other talk that are pending, right?
Sure.
Is that fine?
Yeah, let me launch the quick Zoom poll in the meantime.
So I will stop my screen share till then.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have a question from Ishan. Maybe one question we can take.
So you talk about different metrics from different lenses, basically roles. So we have somehow in our product at some level, right? But sometimes the stakeholders is coming from all the lenses and he wants something at a common place where he can see every angle he has the question and a quality maturity model of the whole product, seeing from every angle at one place. Do you see any value in showing that? Because that might be stakeholders' interest or product owner interest to see all angles, because we have a sonar cube.
Yeah, a lot of different tools that we end up using.
Are there tools to do?
There are tools, or you can build it, right? A simple thing is you build a page with saying, okay, like what you said, you have already multiple dashboards, right? Can you build a uniform gateway to all these dashboards and make it clear and evident what is happening? It's not about putting everything in one page or on one screen. It has to be relevant. It has to be easy to find. But can you make it a single dashboard view that any stakeholder can come, take a look at the information, and it's transparent and it's real time. So no one has to go and build these dashboards manually. No one has to collect the information manually, because that is where you can start gaming the system. And you're spending a lot of time in collection and showcasing that information.
Just to add to the thought what Ishan said, isn't it overwhelming a lot of times when you give that much information in real time?
It depends what is important to you, right? Overwhelming, I always believe in more information than less. But that 80-20 rule also says that I don't want to build everything. What is easy to collect, start off with what is most important and what that metric, what that data will help me take the next decision. If I just want to know as a QA manager, I just want to know what is my status of automation. There's a link to the CI, you can find out over there. But if you want to look at the status, if you want to look at the root cause analysis, if you want to see how I can reduce the automation defects that come up, or defects, test failures because of test data, and I want to fix that problem, then I should be able to see that information. So what is the intention of looking? So asking questions to figure out, you are asking for this data. How is it going to help you? Why do you need it? How is it going to help you? What are you trying to infer from this? And maybe based on that, I can present it to you. I can give it to you in a better way or in a quick way. So having conversation is very important, instead of just saying, these are standard 100 metrics and we want to build a dashboard out of that. 95% of those metrics might not even be seen by anyone. Someone just wants to get a report in their mailbox that yes, the tests have executed, but I don't even care. There's a filter, it's going to a separate folder automatically. Yeah. So we'll continue this on chat if you want. But I hope that gives some insight, right? It's about who and why. That is very important. So thank you everyone for this time.